Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining our November webinar series. We'll just give folks a couple minutes here to get dialed in, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Well, and good day to wherever you are. I wonder if there's people from Europe signed up. It's end of day there. Or almost.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a couple attendees from overseas, so welcome. And then quite a few Canadians on the call we see.
Oh, good.
Oh, no sound. Someone's saying no sound in the chat. We are getting audio ourselves. Is anybody else able to confirm that they're not getting audio? Okay, it may be an issue on your end with the sound there, but let us know if you're still having difficulties. All right, it looks like we've got quite a few people logged in, so maybe we'll just go and get started on a couple of housekeeping items. So like our other webinar sessions, this is going to be recorded. So we do recognize that this overlaps with US Thanksgiving. So thank you if anybody is joining us from the US. We hope you're having a happy Thanksgiving. If you're catching this on the recording, we do have an events page now on our website where we're going to have all the links to our webinars. We will post the recording to this on that when we're done here, and check back as we will be launching our 2025 webinar series shortly. So if you're not able to join us live, no worries. We will have this session recorded today. Another thing we did want to mention is Nyali will be doing the Toronto Building Show. I know we have a lot of Canadians on the call this week, so welcome, and do come check us out if you are in the Toronto region. That's running from December 4th to 6th. And if you use the code on the screen here, TBS24Trade, you can get a free Expo Pass. I think it's usually around $30 or $40 for general admission. So definitely take advantage of that. Come check us out. There's going to be like 500 plus exhibitors at this event, and it's an awesome chance to come see some technology and innovation that's happening in the construction sector. So aside from that, I'd like to introduce Brian McEachern, who's joining us from PCL Construction. And I'll pass it over to Alan and Brian to kick off this webinar.
Sounds really good. Thank you, Laura. I like that idea of the free pass to the Toronto show. I'm in.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, my name's Alan Boyque. I'm one of the founders and initiators of the Nyali solution. And I love hosting these webinars. I get to talk to really interesting people. And Brian, I know from way back, we worked with PCL on developing our solution. They were extremely generous in providing access to their job sites, so we actually get in and stand side to side with the people that matter. And so on that note, first of all, Brian, I thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I thought, why don't you introduce yourself, like how you got to where you're sitting today, your journey into construction, and now your role of, let's see, you're the lean director for Canada, I believe.
I don't have the director title, and titles are people get called what they get called, but I guess what they do call me is I'm our national lean manager. So for me, I work obviously for PCL Construction, and I've been here for just about 13 years. Prior to PCL, I worked in the manufacturing industry. So I worked in the glazing industry. I was a sub-trade and a supplier, both residential and commercial, windows and curtain wall and all that fun stuff. And then decided, I wonder if they have more fun on the GC side. So I jumped over to the GC side of things and moved from Edmonton to southern Saskatchewan to Regina, and joined PCL in operations. So I was a project manager for 8 years, and then as I was doing that, we started introducing this thing called Last Planner System and lean construction, which kind of was an interesting little turn for me, because it kind of came full circle to everything that I had learned about lean on the manufacturing side of things. So I was introduced to lean, in a manufacturing environment, and then now we started to look at introducing it into construction, which was, kind of right up my alley. So a couple of years of kind of doing that and introducing that on an operations side of things, which then led me to the role that I am now, and a move back to our head office here in Edmonton, and now this is what I do full time as my job. So I'm kind of like an internal consultant for a project team. So I go out and teach and support mainly last planner system, but other things that are lean related. But the majority of what we focus on is last planners.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. And one of the reasons that we're sitting here today, I knew you were intimately involved in understanding what's happening at the job site, and
Yes.
getting right to the root of the root cause of some of the challenges that teams face. And we were talking about that place, and you mentioned that one of the biggest things, Alan, is just how sort of inconsistent
Yeah.
everything is. And so why don't we start the conversation with that's really the theme here, about you mentioned a couple things about the projects themselves and inconsistency and the challenge. So why don't you just jump into that?
Yeah, one of the things that and I think, everyone that's in our industry can kind of relate to, and we've seen the graphs and the charts and everything about the productivities and efficiencies and everything over the number of years, and how we compare to manufacturing and other industries, and all that fun stuff. And everything that at least I do, and I would, suggest for everyone to do, is what is actually going on site is what we need to focus on, right? And that's because that's where that's where everything is happening, and everyone who works in the office, and whatever roles that might be, whether that's a PM, a coordinator, accounting, HR, all that, we're all support for what's actually happening on the job site. Those are the people that are putting the work in place, and creating the value for what we do. And when we start looking at, what's going on our job sites, whether that's internally within our company, or anyone that's watching your own companies, or in industry, there's not really a consistency in the way that a lot of this actually happens, whether that's planning, whether that's scheduling, whether that's, doing work a certain way. And I think it kind of comes back to this kind of inherent thing in our industry of, we've always done it that way. And, talking to people about, maybe if you did something, could we look at doing something a little bit different, or can we plan a little bit differently, or do this a little bit differently? There's I don't want to say an unwillingness, but or fear, but it's that whole thing of, well, I've done it this way for 10 years or 20 years, or I've had conversations where it's been, I've done this for 40 years this way, and it's always worked for me, so why would I change? And starting to look at how can we make things better, and then to kind of feed back to the consistency side of it, then because we've got different levels of people in different projects, and people do things slightly differently because they've always done it that way. That starts to feed into this idea of not having consistent processes, or not having consistent ways of doing something, from project to project, company to company, things like that. So one of the other things that I get a lot of when I go and talk to project teams and talk to trade partners is that, PCL might do something one way, but then another contractor will do it slightly differently, and another contractor will do it slightly differently. Or even, one site that they work for us might do it one way, and another site might do something differently. So, from a trade partner perspective, starting to have to try and figure out, well, how are we doing last planner system over here versus how we're doing last planner system over here? Like, things like that are really cause not issues, but it forces people to have to learn something new depending on where they're going. And when we start looking at, well, why haven't we gotten better from a productivity point of view, or an efficiency point of view in our industry? I think that definitely leads to it.
Right. So how much does, I mean, construction project is different. Let's just say like,
Sure.
unless you're beating repeatable
Yeah.
structures in an industrial or residential situation, like how does that affect the process? I mean, you're going to have the trades that worked on, a very simple structure, and now they're coming into a Frank Gehry type of design where nothing's straight, and you do need to have different processes, and it is going to be different in the way. Like, how does
Yeah.
that affect? That must affect things.
Yeah, it's funny you say Frank Gehry, and all I get in my head is that episode of The Simpsons where he's designing the whatever building in Springfield, and he crumples up a piece of paper and throws it on the floor, and he looks at it and goes, "Frank Gehry, you're a genius." Yeah, um, but yeah,
Exactly.
but you're right. Like our industry is. When I say that I come from manufacturing and I start talking about, certain lean ideas from a manufacturing point of view, you start to get you know, you lose people's interest because we're not manufacturing.
That's
Like
right.
I
It's
came
not
from the window
cha-chunk,
industry,
cha-chunk, cha-chunk.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is every window coming off the line different? Yes, but it's essentially, you know, four pieces of frame, some glass, and it comes off the line, right?
Yeah.
And it's coming off the line, whatever, 1,000 a day. Our industry is very different. So, we take, and you just think of it, right? We want to build, we've got a client who wants to build something. And so they assemble a team, consultants, builders, all that stuff. And they throw everybody together. They say, I would like this built, this one-off thing. I need it done for this certain amount of money, has to be done in this amount of time period. Here's the plans, here's whatever it is, or here's the idea, design it, build it, do that really, really efficiently, and for everything that I want, and get it done. And then after you're done, you're all going to disperse, and you're going to go do another one-off thing with a different team. So the way that our industry is set up is we don't have the opportunity to, very too often. Sometimes you maybe do. You get lucky where you can build, a bunch of, sure, maybe it's residential buildings or whatever, or it's like CRU buildings, for retail, where you can just build the same thing over and over again, and you can, improve on your process and everything. But generally, we're coming together as a team, asked to, you know, work together and become a team, build one single item, and then disperse and go our separate ways, and then do it with a whole new team and build something totally different. So that's, I think, where the process part comes into it. So if we can, come up with ways to consistently, and I think that's, the idea of last planner, and coming at this from a last planner perspective, the idea of last planner is to have a consistent planning process, that you can use in different projects and different things, and from company to company, and whatever. The problem becomes then is, are we applying that process the same way, or generally the same way, from project to project and from company to company, to help with industry as a whole? And we've got different people on the projects. We've got a different project that we're trying to build. From company to company, we might have slightly different processes. But is there a way that we can come up with, the backbone of certain ways that things are done, so that we can help, industry as a whole?
Yeah, so from what I hear is the last planner system truly is something that's been developed and helps.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, what the challenges are. I think everybody on
Mhm.
the call today would probably recognize last planner seems to be practiced a little bit differently everywhere.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about how you address that? That might be useful for people to hear. Really, like, how
Yeah.
much leeway do you give it to
Yeah,
be
but
different for that particular team, for that particular
yeah.
for that particular project, versus Brian wants everybody to work like manufacturing and be
Yeah.
consistent. So, what do you talk about that challenge from your perspective?
Well, not to go like talk in the third person or anything, but Brian's tried that, and we want to do it this way and
Yeah.
everything, and not to go back to TV references, but it's like that episode of Seinfeld where George is talking in the third person, right? Um,
Yeah. That's
uh,
right.
Brian's tried that. It doesn't work.
Mm.
You can try to um, dictate that it shall be done step by step every single way. But I think what the problem with that is trying to really get down to the every single individual step should be done this way is you start to lose um, the ability for people to be innovative.
Mm.
And yes, there are definitely certain things and certain parts. I say parts of Last Planet. That sounds bad because it sounds like I'm saying that you don't need to do it all. That's not what I'm saying. Like there are certain behaviors and a framework of Last Planner system that does need to be done because if you don't
So,
do that, it's not Last Planner system.
yeah, so what are the tenets that are not negotiable in your
Sure.
mind and the
Yeah.
things that you have let go? It's, this is
Yep.
your way, you do it, and but these are the things that are important. Let's talk about how
Sure.
you've managed to go from Brian's way to a pretty darn good way, because you
Yeah.
have said to me that, man, we're really making advances in
Yeah.
PCL.
Yeah, we are. And um, so the kind of the must-haves, at least for
Mm,
us, is um, we start with our master schedule, with the
mm,
milestones from our master schedule. So I don't last planner system isn't going to tell you what your milestones are. Those have to come
mm,
from somewhere, right? So
right.
so for us, the master schedule is part of that. It's part of what I call what we would consider the last planner system process. So it starts there. So we take milestones that are from there. That's a must. Um, and then taking those milestones and doing proper phase pulls from those milestones. And then that's the part where where we can start to get some innovation on not necessarily the length of time that the miles it's going to take to get to the milestone. The milestones are the milestones for a reason, right? We're contractually obligated to hit certain dates and certain things, right? So those are not negotiable. And I think that's maybe a misconception of that I did used to get from some field staff, particularly superintendents who don't want to give up control of their schedule, right? And they're
Right.
not giving up control of the schedule per se, right? The milestones are still there and they don't change. Or they shouldn't change unless there's really,
Mm,
certain circumstances where as a team we decide it. But planning out those milestones and trying and getting that true collaboration with the entire project team, like that's another thing that has to happen. If you're not actually getting collaboration even in the phase pull part of this, you're not really doing last planner system.
mm,
You might just be visually showing your schedule and passing it down. So instead of showing a Gantt chart in P6 or project or whatever, okay, you're making it look a little bit easier to read, but you're still just saying, here, go do this. So
mm.
in making sure that your trade partners or consultants or whoever's involved in that phase of work is included in coming up with what that looks like to hit the milestone. Then
Right.
going down from there, then actually doing, proper weekly planning, and breaking that down into more detailed level. Um, the next thing is making sure that you're actually doing measuring yourself. So are you actually tracking your PPC or your plan percent
Mm,
complete for if anyone out there doesn't know what that means? Did we do what we said we were going to do?
mm,
If you're not tracking it, you're not doing last planner system. Like I'm
gotcha.
sorry, you might be doing a little bit of pull planning. I've kind of gotten a little bit more lenient on people calling it pull planning instead of last planner system. I will correct them and say that pull planning is part of the last planner system.
Right.
But I don't get too hung up with, if they call it pull planning instead of last planner,
That's right.
as long as they're doing some of these things. And the last thing that we've started to talk about more lately is daily huddles.
Mm,
And making sure that you're having your daily huddles and you're looking at your plan in your daily huddles and what's actually happening every day. Um, And then the final thing for us is you do all of this, and then it provides you with an update to your plan, so you can then feed that back into your master schedule. Everyone has to
Right.
do schedule updates, whether that's monthly, bi-weekly, whatever your contract says. But now every week you've got an update to your plan. So you can take that information, you can feed it back up into your schedule, and now you've got your schedule update, and it's making it a whole lot easier for people.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, how you like, do they want to use sticky notes? Do they want to use Niali? Do they want to use Excel to visually show some of this stuff? Okay, we can start to be flexible there on how you're doing that. But the real fundamentals are the things that I just talked about, and those are
Right.
the things that should be non-negotiable in Last Planner System. The how you kind of get there, that can be a little bit different, and I've talked to other GCs about it too, where they do things slightly
Mm.
different, but are the basics there? That's what we need to focus on.
Yeah, I think that was nicely said, a nice summary, and you actually pointed at another aspect that is, we're human,
Yeah,
um, and I'll call them your most consistent superintendents. What are some of the things that they do? Okay, so we're committed to the Lost Planner
yeah,
system, and now we've got these darn people that are coming from a very good day or a bad day, or they
yeah.
got a tough part of the job coming up that's challenging, and all those nuances. Um, what are some of the things that your I'll just call them uh, effective superintendents or project manager? What are some of the things they do with their people from
Sure.
day one?
Yeah, I think, well, what starts to happen is, particularly from a, superintendent standpoint, is superintendent starts to become more of a conductor versus a dictator
Mm,
in this setup, and they're not up there with a big stick saying, trying to hit people, and you need to get this done on this day. Now they're becoming more of a facilitator, to be quite
mm,
honest, right? And that's I'm not a super, and I wasn't a super. I was a PM. So this is just kind of more observations and just talking to some of our superintendents who have gone through this. It's changing their mindset a little bit, where they're trying to draw information out of the project team and out of the trade partners versus telling them. And and, and I think I've had superintendents like say, not that it's not that it's liberating, but that it makes it easier, that they're not having to be the middle person anymore,
mm.
right? Not having to have one trade partner over here and one trade partner over here having to actually work together, and the communication coming through them rather than having them just talk to each other. So they're becoming almost more people managers at that point of during the planning process anyway, and pulling the information out of the actual experts in the room. Like it's wild to actually stand in front of a project team and a group of trade contractors and say, as a GC, we're not the expert at everything. You
Mm.
folks are the actual experts at what you're doing. I can't tell you how to be an electrician better than you can, because you're an
That's
actual
right.
electrician, right? So we
Yeah.
need your information, we need your input and your expertise in this. And once trade partners start getting into those type of situations, I think it's liberating a little bit for them too, because they never get asked that. Right? Historically, we've never said that to our trade partners, that, I need your help because you're the expert. What
Mm,
can you provide us to help us create a better plan? And I've
mm.
actually had trades actually say that to me, going, no one's ever asked us that before.
Oh, wow.
And so getting them involved is such an important thing. Like having the actual experts um, involved. And I think that's where our superintendents start to have to change, not have to change, but they start to change a little bit. Not that they didn't talk to trade partners before, but but allowing them to really contribute to what the plan is, and how we work together as a whole and optimize the project versus
Mm.
working in silos and things like
Well, it's kind of interesting in listening to you. I mean, it sounds like, a sports team. the coach is not playing. The coach
It's
maybe
true.
can't even shoot the puck very
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
but is orchestrating and has set up a system or a process. And it strikes me that, a construction team is the same way. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering about the training part.
Sure.
Let's start with the supers. Do you give them that little list of, all the things you just mentioned? Look, if you do this, if you do this, if you do that, like what does PCL do or what do you do? And I'll just call it the training part. And that's,
Sure.
sports teams have tons of practices and the coach owns the practice. The
Yeah.
players own the game, which is
Yeah.
kind of what you're saying. So why don't you talk a little bit about the training of your coaches, we'll call them, or facilitators or conductors, you called them.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of the times from a training perspective, we've got obviously awareness type training of last planner system for, our PCL folks. Um, but a lot of times the training that we'll do is project specific. So sure,
Mm,
our superintendents and our PCL people are aware of last planner system, and they may have done some virtual training or maybe a little bit of hands-on training. Hey, we just did Valego training I just did Vancouver on Tuesday afternoon. Um, we still use that simulation for internal and external people. But from a training perspective for project team, it's best to do training for everybody on the project team. And that
okay.
doesn't mean just our PCL folks. Like that means our, the people with our sub trade partners that are the last planners, right? Making sure that we're training everybody so that everybody is aware of what the process looks like and how we go through it and how we do it. And a lot of times training, we tried years ago to just kind of do the big blast of training, or we'll go out to
Mm,
one of our offices and we're going to train everybody on last planner system.
mm,
But half of those people or three-quarters of those people might not even be about to use it, and they might not use it for 6 months or a
mm,
year. Well, then what happens, right? We
mm.
all know what happens with any of us, with me too. If I learn about something now and I don't use it for a year, am I going to remember it? Parts of it, sure, but not really, right? So we kind of changed it up and went to almost just-in-time training,
Oh,
where
nice.
where a lot of times what we'll do with a project team is we'll come and spend a day and do training in the morning, and then in the afternoon we'll apply that training to something that's going on the
To the
job site. So
right.
we'll learn about last planner system, we'll do the Valego simulation in the morning, have lunch, and then in the afternoon we'll take that and now we'll do a phase pull for a portion of that project so that they're applying what they've learned. And we found that that's kind of the best way to do it. And then they're learning as a team.
Mm,
Superintendent, project manager, 4 people of the trade partners, maybe it's project managers from the trade partners, whatever that looks like.
mm.
We do it together. And then it's also a team building thing too. So
Yeah, absolutely. So how can you tell, or can you,
mhm,
when you go into one of those teams or projects and you're still below grade kind of thing? At what point can you tell that, you can go, yeah, this project's going to go okay? Like, tell me about
sure.
that kind of subtlety where you go in and you go, oh no, I have a problem. Gonna
It's
have
kind
to
of,
keep an eye on this one, or oh,
yeah.
this one's great,
Hey, hey, full disclosure, we've got projects that do fantastic with it, and we've had some projects where it just hasn't worked. Um, and
So
it's
why
kind of
is
weird.
that?
It's hard to,
Let's deal on that one because we have sort of this inconsistent process
sure.
title. So
Yeah.
let's deal with the ones that haven't been, and then
Yeah.
we'll talk about the ones that
Sure.
have been just to finish up.
Yeah. When things go wrong with Last Planner, specifically, uh, it's generally not anything to do with with a lot of for the most part, it's people not buying in. And that
Mm,
could be mainly from a project leadership type standpoint. So,
mm,
if our superintendent doesn't really want to do it, then everything kind of trickles down, right?
right.
Or if maybe we do want to do it and we are doing it, but we're holding everybody else accountable, but maybe not necessarily holding ourselves accountable, you know. So it does come down to, you know, we talk about the project leadership and how does it change, you know, how does superintendents and PMs change a little bit with last planner. Um, if they're not walking the walk, so to speak, then it starts to kind of fall down. And if there's an importance put on it, then it's not going to work. Like, it does take some effort to do it, and if the
Right.
effort's not put in, um, then it's just not going to go there. The other thing is, if you're not actually truly collaborating, and if people aren't truly collaborating, then it's not going to work either. If we're just visualizing the plan, well, we can visualize it in many different ways and just show people what they need to do, and see if that works. But you know, if we're not collaborating, if we're not walking the walk, if we're not holding ourselves accountable, then that's when it starts to fall down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, how many projects are you seeing that some of this process starts to become contractual? Something like, you know, using P6 is you have to use P6 or you should, you
Yeah,
know, that
yeah,
like,
yeah.
have
Like,
you seen that at all? Like using last
oh,
planner or pole
yep.
planning is contractual?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, hey, you start to get into IPD projects, and it's probably going to be in there.
Right.
Um, you know, are we seeing it in just traditional bid lump sum or
Mm,
nor kind of traditional CM work?
right.
Not too often,
Not so much.
but
Okay.
that doesn't, like, I would say, and I've said that I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. Does not matter what your contractual model is. So
Mm,
you should be doing last planner system for the most part. Like,
right.
you know, it whether you're on an IPD project or you're on a traditional lump sum hard bid project, why would you not be doing last planner system? Like, the benefits are definitely there. The research is there, and the just true to life experiences, it's there. And I've ran projects where I've used it, and you can just physically feel it when you're on site, when it's working and it's going well. So from a contractual thing, yeah, it's getting in there every once in a while, but I wouldn't use that as a as a crutch to do it or not do it, because,
Mm,
you know, why this is, you know, about improvement, and why wouldn't you want to do something that makes your planning better,
yeah, absolutely. And
you
you
know?
know, strangely enough, just what you've said is sort of resonates. I've never really heard anybody say that the last planner, I mean, they say sometimes it's a challenge or, you know, you need to, it's different, but
Yeah.
nobody's ever questioned it. Like
No,
it just
and
seems to really, really work. When it's
yeah, well,
working, it really works.
and you're right. You know, does it take effort? Yes.
Mm,
Is it easy? It's not hard, but it's not
mm,
the way that we've done it before, or that I
right,
shouldn't say that. It's not that we haven't collaborated before or done some of this, but it's a different way of doing it, and a different way of kind of almost focusing that collaboration.
right.
So does it take effort? Yes. Um, is it easy? Not right off the start. It does take some learning and everything, but once I would, within 6 weeks, teams that are doing it well, it doesn't even feel like effort anymore. You
Mm,
know, and the cool thing is from a, you know, from a general contractor perspective, because, you know, go back to, like, how much work do we put in place on a job? Like, we have some areas where we self-perform concrete. Well, okay, how much of the job is that? And other areas where we don't self-perform anything. So how much work are we actually putting in place in that building? Hardly any. So from our perspective, you know, when it's really working well, the superintendent, the general contractor, almost taking a step back,
mm,
and the trade partners are the ones that are up at the boards or at the TV or at the screens or whatever it is, working together and working out the plan. And, you know, we're there to remove hurdles in the end, right? So we're, you know, okay, what do you need to get your work done, or what, like, are you missing information on RFI or whatever that is? And now we're starting to identify that and more like further in advance. And we're there, and we can just start removing the hurdles so that work can just flow on the site. And when it happens, and people have been on jobs that flow, you can just feel the difference,
wow.
when you're out there.
Right on. I like that idea. And, you know, more than likely, the team that's going to be on the top of the podium is probably the one that has practiced last planner
Well,
properly.
and just a real
Right.
real quick one before we, because I know we're gonna get closer to time here. Um, when the practice thing and the training thing. So part of what last planner system is you're practicing what you're going to build before you even go out there and build it, right? You're
Mm,
starting, everybody is
yeah.
working together and are coming up, yeah, with what that process is. And I like to tell this to everybody is that in our industry, when we talk about how much waste is in our industry and how much can be improved, it's generally not in the actual individual pieces of work that are being done. Everybody's an expert at what they do, right? And they're good at what they do. The problem and the waste in our industry is the handoffs from one to another.
Mm,
And that's what we're practicing in Last Planner System. We're perfecting that handoff.
right.
And uh, the perfect example now, and it's like they knew that we needed material or something, and in kind of some of the things we talk about with LPS. But look at the Olympics this last year. Who won the 4x100 meter relay? And this isn't about me pumping up Canada, but the Canadians won the 4x100 relay at the Olympics this last year. How many of them were in not just the finals, but the semifinals of the individual race? Not one of them. There were
Mm,
zero Canadians in the semifinals or the finals of the 100-meter individual race, but they won the 4x100 meter final. And why did they do that? Not because they had the four fastest runners. It's because the handoffs were perfected
mm.
and in comparison to the other teams. And that's what we're doing with Last Planner. We're practicing, we're perfecting the handoff before we get out on the job site. And that is one of the ways that we can start to build consistency in what we're doing by actually, practicing it before we get out there.
That's a fabulous analogy, really understandable. And at this point, the people get the chance to ask you some questions. So,
Fire away.
audience, please put them in the chat, and we'll get those answered for you. Take advantage of Brian, and maybe we can just keep on with our topic.
Sure.
What has been your progress? You said you've been, I can't recall how long you've been in this
Sure.
lean management process role in PCL, but what's been your, call it, your KPIs, or how have things developed in PCL?
Yeah.
How are you feeling about your progress?
We've been doing this for a long time. We've been doing, some lean things in Last Planner System for a long time,
Right.
like probably 10 years. Are we to the level where we would hope we would be? No. Um, it's it, this is some of the times when I envy, smaller companies sometimes where, we're a huge company, and started trying to make shifts like this is almost like I use the analogy of steering the Titanic.
Mm,
It doesn't happen overnight, and not wanting to dictate and mandate that you shall do things a certain way is also
right.
part of that, right? We like to allow people to be innovative and everything. So it was slow to get it adopted, initially. Over the last couple of years, it has started to pick up quite a bit, and I
Okay.
attribute that to growing almost at the grassroots is maybe not the right term, but at the level where we get some superintendents that are starting to use Last Planner, and then they start talking to each other, and it's starting to more grow from a peer-to-peer
Mm.
perspective where
So is that a regional or
uh
type of
both
project?
both
Yeah.
in a regional area it's a little bit easier because they're talking to each other all the time and they see results in one
Right.
area all the time. It does really grow when you start to get someone who has a lot of experience and is very well respected. Alan, you obviously know Ivan, and when Ivan was around for us, he's a 40-year superintendent, and when when that level of person buys into a process and starts to tell others about it, they listen to him more than they listen to me. Um, hey, I wasn't a superintendent. I'm not a, field person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person works in an office behind a computer, and I have when I was in operations, and I do now. So I'm not, I don't have this preconceived notion that people should listen to me before listening to their peers.
Right.
So, getting certain people on your side and having them tell others, that's kind
Yeah.
of the way that's really started to grow.
Okay.
Will it be a standard or something we shall do in the future? Maybe, but you know,
Well, you have to have goals, right? I
yeah,
see
right.
there's a couple questions
Yeah,
popped in the
yeah, right.
chat. So I don't know if Laura, if you want to help get those into Brian.
Well, I can see them over here too.
Okay.
So let's start here. We'll start with the top here.
Sure.
Ryan, would you say that while teams and projects vary, our planning method offers the hope of a consistent process in the world of building? Yeah, I think that's probably the idea, Ryan, is that, if we can start to create a collaborative way that project teams can work together and plan, um, you know, I think we would hope that that would start to um, get rid of some of that unpredictability and create a little bit of consistency. I would also say on the flip side, the other side to that is that you don't want to hinder people's ability to make things better and all that. So, yes, to a certain extent, but we still want to continue to improve as well. So,
Yeah. So there's a comment about, it's start LPS at the start, not when you have a problem. And then there's another interesting question about level of detail of the milestone. You talked about the
yeah,
milestones in the schedule, and they're saying, so what level of detail do your schedulers put in, or what do you start with in your actual building
sure.
project?
Sure. So from a schedule perspective and how much detail, our detail level, it depends on your contract. Like I don't want that sounds like the cop out answer of it depends. But first things first, you need to understand your contract and what does your contract say from a level of detail for your schedule. If your schedule is required to be a level four schedule, well, you're building a level four schedule. If it doesn't specify that, typically what our schedules look like, and I'm not a scheduler, so this is I know enough to be able to talk about it, but
Mm,
our schedules are typically what you consider a level three schedule. So yes, we've got milestones, we've got activities that are 5 to 20 days of duration. And generally, if you look at that from a comparison to last planner system, our CPM schedule and our phase pull are what we would consider the kind of the consistent and should match. Unless our schedule or unless our contract dictates something different and we have to have more detail in our schedule, then we'll obviously go to that. So what ends up happening is that at your weekly work planning level, you're getting into more detail. Like your weekly work planning is really a level four schedule. Um, so does that mean that every single item in that level four needs to be put back into the CPM schedule? Not necessarily. Am I going to put a 1 day activity that we're going to install door 1, 2, 3 on Thursday back into my master schedule? Probably not. But I'm going to have the big items and everything that are in my master schedule are going to match the durations and everything that's going on in the weekly work planning. So the level of detail, like I said, phase pull is kind of where we have that magic
mhm.
kind of link to it, unless our contract dictates otherwise, and we have to get into more detail. And if you're on an industrial project or something like that, you're going to be way further than a level three. You're probably a level four, maybe even a level five. Who knows, right? Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I
um,
think
I
your
do want to I do want to
message.
hit back on the other one there about when to implement.
Mm,
And I do agree that yes, implementing at the very start, ideal if you can do that. But that doesn't mean you can't do it partway through. And it does take a little bit of time and effort, as Thomas has said there. Um, but like I've implemented last planner system in the last 6 weeks of a job to get it to the finish line. So
mm,
you can
wow.
implement it at any point. Obviously, if you can do it at the start, it's way more beneficial. So
Right on. Let's see, we have a couple other questions. Oh, at what point in the this is a point poking at IPD a little bit. At what point do you start to practice the last planner system or similar, right back to the, pre-construction, the RFP, the bidding process. Like,
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think as early as you possibly can. And I would say at the RFP and RFQ stage, if you're starting to look at what specific lean processes and tools you're going to introduce, and starting to talk about that at that stage is ideal. Sometimes you don't even get that opportunity, and it might be, we're getting a response in there because it's a short amount of time and we get going, and then you can look at it as you go. We don't, unless it's specifically asked for in the RFQ, and you start to talk about the certain things that you're going to use during the project. Obviously, you're going to do that. Do we add in certain things into our responses to say that, well, we're going to use last planner system on this project, or we're going to, work collaboratively with the consultants during the, whatever's left during a CM job. Yeah, you do whatever you can to try and win the work. But once you're actually starting to execute it, right from the beginning, if you, even in a CM job where you maybe only have half of a design and you need to work with the consultants to finish the design, like, use last planner system with your design teams. If you're in a design build project, use last planner system with right up front, because all of this, yes, we're talking about from a site perspective, all of this works further back up the project life cycle, and you can even use it right in your process for RFP and RFQ responses. Like, we've done value stream maps on what does our RFP response look like, and how long does that take, and what can we do to improve it, and is there waste in the process? So you can use this, whether it's last planner or other lean processes, right through the project and right through your company.
Right. Wow.
So,
Sounds good. So Laura, did we address all the questions?
There's a couple that have come into the chat and in the Q&A. So there's one here that says, what percentage of total PCL buildings have implemented LPS?
Not as much as I would hope. So from a total percentage, I'd be guessing at this point, less than half, I would say. But again, keep in mind that this is where being in a smaller company kind of helps a little bit from that perspective. We're a pretty large organization, so trying to make big changes to process isn't necessarily easy. So we're slowly getting there. And would I like the rate to be higher? Yeah, I would. But is that causing us problems? No, because the flip side to that is that if everyone all of a sudden switches right off the bat, then we've got a resource problem, and how do you support that and train people and everything? So I think it's at a level that is sustainable, but hopefully at some point we'll continue to get that percentage higher.
Yeah, there's another question that I'm kind of fascinated by, and it's, do you see a different level of collaboration between sort of the paper sticky notes and using a digital wall? Like, that's sort of an interesting question.
Yeah. Well, Alan, we've had this conversation before, probably too.
Yeah.
I was not one to embrace technology for last planner system very quickly. So but does that mean that I see a different level of collaboration from using sticky notes to using digital technology? Not necessarily. I do, and I'm still a sticky note kind of. I think if you're gonna do last planner system, and especially for the very first time, whether that's in your company or with a project, at least starting with some sticky notes is a good thing, because I'm still of the mind that learning the process is the most important thing. And the easiest way to learn the process is to grab a couple pads of these. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have custom printed ones or anything like that. Grab some of these, grab your team, and start to work together and create a plan. Take a milestone and work back and do a phase pull. Just using sticky notes on a wall. It's cheap, it's easy, and you can do it right now. Then you can start to, once you understand the process, implementing technology is kind of the next logical step, right? And if you look at it from a lean perspective, using sticky notes, there's waste built into that. Sticky notes fall off the wall. You have to, I always feel for the electricians because they always have to write out a pile of notes they're doing rough-in for 6 weeks in different areas. So the amount of times they have to write, electrical rough-in in this area, so you do get the benefit of technology. Here's the thing though. Technology won't fix a bad process. No matter what, not just last planner. And we've had this on projects where we've used more than one different type of technology for LPS, and there's still problems. And what was the root cause? The root cause was that the process was broken. So what did we do? We went back to sticky notes because we just removed the technology out of it and went back to the basics of let's do last planner system properly. And if it's sticky notes that works for you, it's sticky notes that works for you. And then you can start to implement the tech. The thing just to watch out for with technology, and this is not to downplay technology because it's super valuable and like there's so many benefits to using like a program like Niali or any of the other ones, is that you do get the benefit of being able to reduce some of that waste. The one problem that you may run into is making sure that people are engaged. And that may be the basis of the question a little bit. Are you more engaged if you're using sticky notes than if you're using tech? I think that comes down to the project team and facilitating those sessions properly. You can be just as engaged using technology as you can writing a sticky note, and we have that happen, right?
Yeah, thanks for that perspective. And if anybody's interested in, call it the power of sticky notes, we just published a blog post on the Niali website. So at niali.com, go to the blogs area, and there's an article about sticky notes, Brian.
There you go. See, and then the technology company talking about sticky notes. That's perfect.
Embrace the power of sticky notes. Sticky notes are big.
Yeah.
They have inner bigness, Brian. That's what I call it.
Hey, you know what? I have as much as and we obviously plug Alan and Laura's company a little bit. Like for when we do digital last planner, we use Niali. I still have a pallet of sticky notes in the basement here, though. So like literally a pallet of custom printed sticky notes. So we send those out to project teams all the time. They still use them. So
that's good to hear. We're 100% behind that perspective, as you know. I'm just wary of the time. Usually we go to 45 minutes, but clearly the topic was interesting and topical, and we should probably let people get back to their business. We didn't get to all the questions, but
if you have any questions or you want to talk to me, like Alan or Laura probably has my contact info. There's a real quick one there about verbiage and subcontracts. We do that sometimes with Last Planner System. We do have some standard subcontract language that we can and will put into some of our subcontracts if we feel that we need to. But a lot of times we don't put that in there because we want it to be more collaborative. But sometimes I put it in my subcontracts too. So
right on. So this has been a very rich conversation. I really like some of your analogies, making some of the tricky parts of building a consistent process, and I think it was really understandable. I hope everybody took away one thing today. That was your jobs. And Laura, did you have any closing comments before we sign off today?
No, other than that we have recorded this session and we will have it up on our website likely later today. So check back if you'd like the recording link.
Yeah, and please forward to other people that you think may be interested in the topic. And again,
Yeah,
Brian, thank you
yeah,
so much. Happy planning. Working
absolutely.
together to get things done is what we like to say.
Absolutely. No, thanks for having me. This was fun. And, like I said to everyone out there, if you have questions or you want to talk or anything, it's about making the industry better. So, a lot of this isn't secret spices or anything like that. It's we want to make everyone better. So if you have any questions, I'm always willing to chat.
Very generous. And on that note, I think we'll sign off. And until next time, happy planning.
So, thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.